Welcome to my complete Supabase course for beginners. In less than 2 hours, you will learn everything you need to know to use Supabase for your next project. For those who don't know, Supabase is what we call BaaS, Backend as a Service, which means that you can abstract and fast-track many of the tedious aspects of setting up your backend and instead focus on building an amazing client experience. An example of another BaaS is Firebase. However, Supabase has been getting very popular for its open source approach, seamless integration with Postgres, and a developer-friendly ecosystem that makes building, scaling, and securing your application easier than ever. In this course, you'll dive into setting up projects, managing data with tables and RLS policies, integrating Supabase with React, handling authentication and real-time subscriptions, and even managing file storage. Before we get into the video, if you could leave a like and subscribe, I would massively appreciate it. Now that I got that out of the way, let's dive in. Okay everyone, so to get started, I want you to go to supabase.com or click the link in the description. You'll find yourself in this website over here, and I want you to click on the sign in button at the top. Now there's different ways in which you can create your Supabase account if you don't have one. If you have one, just sign in with your normal one, but if you don't have one, then you can either create one using GitHub, using SSO if your company is requesting you to use Supabase, or just signing up using an email or password combination. So I need you to create your account by following the instructions, and then when you finish that, come back to the next part of the video. Now, when you create your account, you might be prompted with this board over here, where it's going to ask you to create a new organization. This is just going to be where you're going to store your projects, and you can organize it in different ways. For example, if you're creating a Supabase account for your company, the example that they give here is you can use create different organizations inside of the company, which are referencing different parts of the company. So in my view, honestly, just give it a name that fits your existence, maybe your name, maybe I don't know, your company if you're working on it. I'm just going to call it PedroTech Vids, something like that. Now, type of organization, you're going to choose whatever matches yours. I'm going to choose personal, and then plan. You will like to choose whichever one matches you more, but I would recommend obviously starting with free. And there's a lot that you can do with just the free plan. It's like for you to need to pay for Supabase, you need to at least already be making money because of the amount of users that requires you to actually bypass the free tier. The free tier is very generous. So we're going to click on Create Organization, and it's going to actually create and set up our account. Now, as you can see, when this is done, we're going to be prompted with creating a new project. So when we are going to, so for each project that requires you to use Supabase, you want to create a new project inside of Supabase for it. So in our case over here, we're just going to create a project inside of the PedroTech Vids organization we just created. We can call this whatever we want. I'm going to call it Supabase course. And then the password is just a password for the Postgres database that is going to exist in this project. Now, I highly recommend you clicking on generate a password over here, because then Supabase will automatically generate a password that is extremely strong. You can copy this, and I do recommend copying this and storing it somewhere so you can have access to it later, but we really don't need it right now. You just leave it like this, and you will use this as the password when creating it. Now the region. Choose the region that is closest to whichever your users are going to be at. So basically, if you're making an app and your app is for people in India, or your app is for people in, I don't know, in London, maybe choose that location as the location of where your project is going to be hosted at. I personally am in Vancouver, so I'm going to choose West US because it's the closest one. Now for security options and for advanced configurations, that's extremely optional, and rarely you make any changes to this, so I wouldn't worry at all about those other options. I'm just going to click over here on create new project. Now as you can see, we are prompted with our project, Supabase course. And in here, we can see a lot of things that Supabase might want to offer to us. For example, here are some of their products. You can set up authentication using Supabase. You can set up file or image storage. You can have edge functions, real-time data, and so on. I'm going to go over most of this in this tutorial. You can obviously skip through the different sections by using the timestamps and the video chapters. But what we want to start with is the most basic thing. So how do I actually use this dashboard? So you can see all of the different products appear over here. This is the first thing you need to know. If you're dealing with storage, you click on the storage section. If you're dealing with database, you click on the database section. Now, the database we already created. Now, there's no tables in it yet. There's nothing, but these are all the things that we can do in relation to the database. Now, like explained in the intro, Supabase is an alternative to Firebase, and it is a great alternative to Firebase. It is known as a backend as a service, meaning that you actually don't have to build your own backend. Supabase will help develop everything for you and introduce you different methods and functions that you can call in your front end to actually execute functionality that you would normally have to serve through an endpoint that you build on your backend. So it also hosts the database completely for you, and the database for your project is going to be basically the core of your Supabase project, because that's where your data is going to be at. So if you want to create a table or do anything related to your database, you can use either the SQL editor or the table editor. The table editor basically is very visual, and it's what we're going to be using, which is just UI. You can create tables, edit it, do that kind of stuff. And the SQL editor actually allows you to write some SQL commands here that when you click on the run button, it will execute them and it will reflect on the rest of your database. Now, we're going to leave this for later. We're going to start with the table editor. And if we want to create our first Supabase table, we're going to click on create a new table. Now, in order to create a table, you first need to give it a name. For example, in this tutorial, we're going to be creating multiple tables just to show to you guys and demonstrate. The first one we're going to create is a very simple one that you might have in any web app. We're going to create a users table where you might want to store information about users. So if I want to create a users table, I might want to call it users. Remember that this name will be, you'll have to use this name when you're accessing it in your code, so give a name that makes sense. Now, you can put a description if you want to, but this is completely optional. And to be honest, unless you have like a lot of different tables in your project, I don't think it makes sense for you to add a description because you know what each table represents. Now, enable row level security. Now, row level security is an extremely important topic in Supabase, and by the end of this video, you guys will be very adept and understand what it entails. However, for now, we're going to skip it just because it will come right after this. Let's just deal with the tables first. We're going to keep this enabled, and I highly recommend that you do keep it enabled for every single table you create. Now, we're not going to click on enable real-time. You'll see that this will be specifically useful when we're dealing with real-time data. So like dealing with sockets, with listening to events happening through the database in real time. We are going to talk about this later on in the video, but for now, we'll again just leave it unchecked. Now, here's how you define some columns for your Supabase table. See, by default, every table already starts with an ID column, which is of type int A, and it is the primary key of that table, and also a column for the created at, which will be auto-generated when you add a new item, and it will just save when this item was added to the table. Now, if you want to add a new column, you're going to click on, obviously, the add column button over here, and you want to give it a name. Now, an example of a name that we might want to use to store in a users table might be their email, right? Now, you just write the name of the column. Right here, you can choose the type. Since this is Postgres, these are the types that are available. Now, you can go over all of them and see which one makes more sense for what column you're adding. But in this case, an email is very reminiscent of a text, right? It's just a variable length character string. I'm going to choose text. Now, for the default value, we won't put anything. We actually don't want to allow users to be created if their email is null, because then they're not a user. If we want to enact that ability to prohibit null values in this column, we'll have to click on this button over here, and there's a couple extra options that we can define for this column. The main one is this one over here that is by default checked. It says is nullable. We want to uncheck that to make sure that this column is not allowing null values. If you want to make it such that this column is unique, for example, I think an email is unique, right? Because you don't want people to create two accounts with the same email. So I might want to add it to is unique, meaning that it will enforce if values in the column should be unique, meaning that if you try to add a user with an email that already is in the table, it won't allow you to. Now, we're going to keep it like this, and we might want to add another column. To add another column, we'll just skip over here, and we might want to add something like age. And an age will probably be represented by an integer. Now I'm going to choose int 8 over here. And we also don't want to accept null values, but we might actually set the default age to a value. So for example, if you want to make it such that if you don't include age when you're trying to insert an item into this table, you can put, for example, 18 or 20 here as the default value, meaning that when that insertion happens, if age is empty, 20 will be set to age. Perfect. Now to create the table, you just click save and it will add all the 4 columns, and you'll see that now we have a users table and all of the different columns we created appear over here. Now to insert data into this table, you can use their insert row functionality here. This will allow us to just add a value here. For example, for the created ads, it would just default to now. But for the email, I can say, for example, my email here as the email value. And then for the age, let's put 23. I'm going to click save. And you'll see that now we have that item, that row in our table, and the ID defaults to 1. Now, what if you want to actually make a change to this table after there's items on the table? For example, if I want to click on this plus button over here, I'll be able to add a new column to the table, even though I already created it. Let's add the name column. And this column, you'll see that the UI changed a bit because now we're just adding one column. But we can choose the type over here. I'm going to choose it to be text as well. And let's make it not nullable. When I click save over here, you'll see that it failed. And the reason why it failed is because we made this column be not nullable, but there's already an item here that doesn't have a name. So either we default a value over here to something, or we actually have to delete this row before creating or editing our table to add that new column. So let's do that. Let's come over here and add name now, choose text again, make it not nullable, and now we can actually add the new column. Now, if I were to insert a new row, again, same thing. I'll just add an email here. I will actually not put any age, so you guys see that it will default to 20. And then I'll put a name here, Pedro Machado. That's my name. And then I click save, and you'll see that we have successfully added this row to the table. Now, before I show you guys how to connect Supabase to an actual project, more specifically a project using React, I want to talk about that topic that I briefly mentioned when we were creating our table, which is the topic of role level security, or also known as RLS. This is very important in Supabase because RLS protects your data by applying conditions to the queries in your table, meaning that you can restrict what kind of queries a user can make to your tables depending on what operation they're making, depending on their authentication status, depending on whatever condition you decide to write. These conditions are known as policies. And it is important that when you have RLS enabled, which we had because we created this table with RLS enabled, I don't know if you guys remember, because we have it enabled, this means that we have to add an RLS policy. You see this button over here. If you don't add any RLS policy, then by default, no user will be able to do anything to your table. So even if you connect Supabase to your project, no user will be able to add anything, read anything, delete anything, or update anything because you haven't specified what users can do those operations. So I'm going to click on the add RLS policy, and it's going to automatically take us to the authentication product in our Supabase project. Now in here, we are inside of the policies tab inside of configuration, and RLS policy is something related to authentication, but we haven't set up authentication yet. So RLS is something related to authentication, and we have here our users table, but we have no RLS policies created. So let's click here on create policy, and this should pop up. Now immediately it might look a bit confusing just because there's too much things on the screen. However, I'll break it down for you. You can define what kind of different policies for different types of users with different roles in your table, who and explain if they can or cannot execute certain commands. So in a SQL table, there are different commands that you can execute. There's a select command, an insert command, an update, a delete, or all, which just means all of the commands. And those commands refer to different actions on your table, right? And you might not want anyone to just go ahead and delete everything, because then you might make your table vulnerable for people who want to erase your data. So that might be a policy. You might want to only allow certain users to delete users on the table, maybe just staff or admins and so on. Now, every user in your Supabase project, they're going to have a role. And that role is defined in this target roles over here. You see, you can define policies based on the roles that you want. The most common role is the anon role, which you might have seen that name before when setting up your Supabase project. Anon literally means anonymous. It means basically everyone in your project. And there's also the authenticated role, the authenticator role, the dashboard user, and a bunch of other roles as well. And you could create a role if you want to as well. Now, if you want to create a policy, you can define them by putting a policy name here at the top. You can write whatever you want, choosing the table over here. We only have one table, which is the users table, and choosing what kind of policy behavior this policy is going to have. So for example, when you put it as permissive, it automatically combines all of the different operations using the R operator. So it basically will be a more permissive policy behavior. If you want to choose the restrictive, you can go ahead and do that as well. Now, again, you can choose the different commands, and the UI down here with the SQL command that will refer to it will update as you click. Now, what I actually recommend is that you use some of the templates, because I found that me myself have rarely found a situation in which I needed to write the policy myself. Actually, most of the tables that I've made, the policies were already predefined over here. For example, let's see this. Imagine if you have a table. A table, usually you want to allow read for all users. And the reason for that is because if you want to display something on the screen, right, the read request will just give you the data from the table. Maybe not in this example where the table is users, so we don't want to allow user information to be displayed for everyone. But for the sake of this video, let's assume that you want to allow people to see user data. So you would click on this policy over here, and automatically this would update to show a policy that would enable read access to your table for all users. Now, to apply this policy, you click on Save Policy, and you'll see that now we have our select policy over here. We want to add a policy for all the commands. So for select, for delete, for update, and for read. So for select, for delete, for update, and for insert. So let's do the insert one, because this is also a no-brainer. If you want to allow people to add new users, imagine that in this project, you can't just go ahead and create your account. You have to, an administrator needs to come and add the user for you, right? So you only want to allow people who are authenticated to insert information into this table. So maybe this insert policy over here would match you pretty well, because what it says is, see, you want to create a policy which will enable insert for authenticated users only on the users table. It is a permissive policy with the insert command, and the target role that we're targeting is authenticated people. You can put multiple roles as well if you want it. You can say dashboard user as well. And then you'll see that it will put a check to say true, meaning that you can do this in case you are authenticated or a dashboard user, meaning you can insert. So we're going to click on save policy over here, and this will enable the insert policy for us. So I'm going to add the other ones as well for the update and for the delete. So for the update, it's basically, if I click here, actually edit policy, you'll see that it checks for you being, again, if you have an email, you will only be able to edit information related to your own email. So it automatically recognizes that this is the policy that you want. You're only able to update information about yourself. Now, it will make a lot more sense, the policies, when we actually start building our project. But for now, this is what RLS policies are and why they are useful for your project. Now, how do we connect our Supabase project with a React application to actually build this and use it as a service? So I have here a project that is running on React and Vite, and I want to connect Supabase to this project. So how do I do that? Keep in mind that the process would be the same if you're using NextJS, if you're using React Router v7, if you're using Remix, if you're using whatever you're using, the process would be the same. And here's how you would do it. You would create a Supabase client file inside of your project. So I will create it inside of my source folder. I'm going to call it Supabase client.ts. And inside of here, you want to import a file from the Supabase package. Now, the Supabase package you need to install. So we're going to run npm install, and we want to install at supabase/supabase-js. Now, when that's installed, we'll come over here and we're going to import from at supabase.js. We want to import the create client function. Now, this create client function will require us to pass in two things inside of it. So I'm going to call it create client over here. And we want to pass two things. The first one is the Supabase URL, and the second one is the Supabase anonymous key. Now, to get both of them, we actually want to get them from the project. So we're going to come to our Supabase project over here. And if you go down here, you'll see that the project API will show the URL and the API key that you need. So I'm going to copy the project URL, which is this thing over here. Don't copy mine because it will already be disabled by the time you're watching this video. And you might want to put it over here. Now, the second one is the API key. You'll copy it and you'll want to put it after the comma. And you want to do it as a string as well. Perfect. Now, I'm going to mention the elephant in the room. You definitely want to keep this as environment variables. Put them in a .env file so that when you push this code into GitHub, this isn't what is direct, like you are not publishing your API keys directly. But since this is not the point of the video, I'll just keep it like this. Perfect. Now we have successfully connected to our Supabase account. So now how do we create the... So now let's learn how to actually integrate it into our project. So the example we're going to be building on for the next, 30 minutes of this course is we're going to be building a simple task manager CRUD. So you can see here, I have this already, the UI set up. It's a very, very simple UI. This is what it looks like. We want to create a table in our Supabase project that will keep track of some tasks. And a task can have a title, it can have a description. And we want to demonstrate here and learn how to do the 4 different operations you can do with a Supabase table, right? So we want to be able to add a task by inserting it into the table. We want to be able to show the list of tasks over here, even though I just showed one as an example for you guys. And each task will have a title and description we want to display. And for each of them, we want to be able to edit it and also delete it. So the 4 operations are going to be executed in our React app. So to do this, we want to create our table. We're going to come here to table editor. And again, similar to what we've learned so far, we want to click on new table over here. And we want to give it a name. So I'm going to call it the tasks table. Now, just for now, we're actually going to disable row level security. Now, because we actually don't have set up authentication yet, we're going to remove that. But later on in the video, we are going to learn how to allow users to sign in and log into their account. And then we will set up a row level security to actually only allow authenticated users to do so. But for now, we'll keep it disabled, meaning that anyone can operate or use any of the different operations in our table. So then what we're going to do is we're going to add a new column. The column we're going to add is for the title. So we'll add title. The type of it will be text. And we also don't want to allow it to be null. Now the other one is going to be the description. And the description will also be text, and it will also not allow it to be nullable. Now we're going to click save, and this is a very simple table we just created. Now, while it is adding the 4 columns to our project, as you can see, just added over here, the tasks table is now available. We want to come back to our code. Now, if you want to build upon, based on the UI I already have over here, a version of this code will be in the description, so feel free to check it out. So if you go to the link in the description, there's going to be a link to a version of this code, which is just going to be from this point. It's probably going to be called CRUD starter. It's the starter point for this part of the video. If you want to check out the full code, it will also be there. So what we want to do is we want to connect to our Supabase table and execute an insert command whenever we type on these 2 inputs and click on the add task button. So to do that, what we want to do is we want to first keep track of what the user is typing on while adding a new task. So we're going to create here just a state for that. I'm going to call it new task, and I'm going to create a function called set new task. And this state is just going to be a state which will take in an object with a title and a description. Now, what we do is we will just replace those values whenever there's any changes to both inputs, right? So for example, on the on-change of the title input, whenever there's any change to the input, we want to run this function, which will set a new task equal to, and then we'll get the previous value because we want to know what the current object is. We'll keep it the same, but the thing is, we will want to, and also I need to put some parentheses here so it works because it's returning an object. But then what I want to do is I want to edit just the title field in this new task. So I'll update the title, and I'll set the title equal to the event.target.value so that we're only updating the title and keeping the description the same. We'll do the exact same thing with the text area, but instead of updating the title, we will be updating the description, and we will keep the title the same. Perfect. Now we have the data that we want to submit to our table. Now what we want to do is create a function that will be called when we want to submit it. So I'm going to call it handle submit, and I'm going to call it whenever the form has an unsubmit over here. Perfect. Now, when we add a new task, we actually want to make this an async function. And here is where we want to call Supabase to insert the item. We're going to first get the event so we can just prevent default right off the start. Then I'll also set this to any, because it's not a TypeScript video. I don't want to go into details about types. But then what I want to do is I want to call the Supabase client that we just created. With the Supabase client, we can execute any operations we want on any of the Supabase tables. Now, any operation using Supabase will return a promise, so you need to await them. So that's why we made the function async. Now, with the Supabase client that we have over here, when I press dot, you'll see that there's many different things I can do with it, right? There's many methods that they provide to us. When we're dealing with tables, we have to access the from function over here, because this will allow us to specify what table we are talking about. Now, if I press this, you'll see we can only have two different tables, right? We have the users and the tasks table. So if I want to execute any command in the tasks table, I will write here the name tasks and it will refer to that. Now, the command we want to operate on this table is represented by whatever function we call after this. See, there's a bunch of them over here. More specifically, we want to insert something into our table. So I'm going to call the insert function. And inside of here, I can actually put a variety of different things. I can put actually just one object, which is what we're going to be doing. We're just going to be inserting one item, which is actually going to be the new task. So we don't even have to make an object. We'll just pass the new task over here and it will insert this on the table. But if we wanted, we could actually add multiple objects at the same time. We can pass a list inside of this insert function and you can bulk add items to your table. Now we'll keep the insert with just one, and we actually want to specify that will just be one as well, and this should insert the data. Now when you make an operation with Supabase, you want to check to see if you succeeded or if there was any errors, so you can actually extract some of the stuff that comes back from this operation. And some of the most common things you might want is the error or the data in this case. And one of the most common things you might want to extract is the error. Now, the error over here, you might want to check, for example, if there's any errors, then I'll just console.error, and I'll say error adding task, and then I'll just display the error.message. Perfect. But if this isn't the case, then we have succeeded. So I'll just set the new task to be in its empty stage again. Perfect. Now let's check to see if this worked. Let's come over here and let's try to add a new task. For example, do my homework. Even though I don't have homework anymore, I'll write task description over here and I'm gonna say finish 8 assignments for math 341. I don't know. And then I'm gonna click on add task. I don't know if it succeeded or not. If there was any errors, we would have seen it on our console log over here, but it doesn't seem like there was any. The only way for us to be sure is if we come to our table and we refresh this, you saw it already appeared over there. The data we inserted here now appears on our table, meaning that we successfully inserted this item. Perfect. This is what we wanted. Now that we have an item, I'm actually gonna write another one, clean my room, just for us to have at least two. Deep wash room. I don't know. I'm going to add this task. You'll see it will also be added over here. Now, what I want is I want to be able to read and display them over here. So to do that, I actually will create a function over here called fetch tasks. I'm going to keep this as simple as possible so that we don't have to worry about anything React related. We're just focusing on the Supabase part. And we want to fetch the rows in the task table. So to do that, I'm going to copy actually this operation over here and paste it here. Now we're going to keep pretty much the same, right? We're still dealing with the tasks table, but the difference is we're not inserting anymore. We're actually selecting. Now when you select this function over here, you have to specify which columns you want to select from the table. I want to select every single column from the table. So I want to know everything about the task. Then you also can do other things to this select operation. For example, you can get the items in a certain order. And this order, for example, we could order based on the ID. And to do that, you would just put the field over here. For example, we can order it based on the created at, so that we have it in order from when it was created. And you can choose if you want to make it on an ascending order or a descending order by just setting ascending equal to true or false. So here we just selected all the items from the task table and we didn't put any restrictions to it. So we'll get everything back. Now we will still want to access the error, similar to what we did with the insert, but we also want to access the data that this gives us back. And to do that, we will also destructure here the data. Now we'll do the same check we did before over here with the error. So instead of saying adding tasks, we'll say reading tasks. And if this doesn't error, which by the way, I want to actually return after this, and I also want to return after this so that it doesn't actually continue forward if we errored. Then if it succeeded, what I want to do is I actually want to keep track of this list of tasks through a state. So I'm going to create a state here called tasks and set tasks. And this will be a list, which will start empty. And when we fetch the data, we will replace the list with the data that we received. Now, since I am dealing with TypeScript, this is giving us an error because we haven't defined any types. I'll just define here what the type is for a task. It's basically an ID, a title, a description, and a created at. And then I'll just make it such that this state has a list of tasks. And if you want to insert a type, oh, I put it to the wrong state. Sorry, I'll do it here. And you can see that now that error went away. Perfect. Now, what we want to do is we want to fetch this data whenever the page loads. And the easiest way to do this without worrying too much is just running it on the use effect. So I'm going to call the fetch tasks over here. And don't forget to put a dependency array so you don't keep fetching data from a table. And now I want to actually console log I'll console log over here the list. So let's console log the tasks list. And what we should see is that on our console, we should see a list with 2 items, and they are the 2 items that we created on our table, meaning that we successfully fetched the data. Now, all we want to do is display it in the UI. To do that, we're just going to come to this over here, which is the list of tasks area. And inside of here, we have an unordered list. So in this part, I just want to loop through the list of tasks by saying tasks.map. We'll loop through each item. We'll grab the task and we'll grab the key. And we want to display whatever's already over here. So I'm actually going to close this off down here. So we have some, so it's not giving us errors. And then we'll give a key to this list item. And now we have access to the task. What I can do is I can replace this title with the actual task.title. I can replace the description with the actual task.description. And you'll see that now we have all of the items being displayed on our screen with the correct title and the correct description. Perfect. We're halfway done through our CRUD. Now let's add the ability to delete an item from the table. Now for deleting a task, it's going to be very similar from the other two. I'm even going to copy the functions and we're going to make a separate function for each action. This one is going to be delete task. And the difference, as you might expect, is that instead of calling insert or select, we're going to call delete. Now for deleting a task, we have to actually add something more because we want to specify which task we want to delete. So I want to actually delete a task based on the ID of the task. The ID I'm going to get directly from the argument of this function. Now over here, let's make this a number. Then over here, what we want to do is we want to add an equivalence operation. It's going to be a condition that we want to set to which item we want to delete. And this you can add to any of the operations. For example, I can add this to a select statement over here and it will work the same way. It will apply this condition to this select statement. It's this condition that I'm talking about is basically we want to only delete the item in which the ID column is equal to the ID of the item we want to delete. So when you use this equal over here, this EQ, you're basically asking, is this column that you put over here equal to this value? And if so, then execute this operation. So this is great because now if there's any errors, we can say error deleting task. But if there isn't any errors, then this will delete the item from the table. So let's call this function when we click the delete button. To do that, I'll just come over here and I'll click on delete, on click, and I'll call the delete task. And to pass the ID here, I can access it through the task. So I'm going to say task.id. Perfect. Now let's come back over here and let's click delete for one of them, maybe this one. Obviously, since we're not optimistically updating this, it didn't delete it automatically. But if I refresh this, you'll see that the next fetch doesn't include that. And if I come over here and refresh this, the information on the table also doesn't include that. So great, we're now able to delete it. For updating, it is like at this point, it's clockwork. You already understand it. To update, it's going to be simple as well. For example, imagine I want to be able to actually change the description, right? So edit the description. So to do that, it will look super ugly. I'm going to add another text area over here. And this text area will say updated description. You'll just write another description. And when you click the edit button, it will update that description. It's very simple, but that's the whole point. So we will want to come over here, and when we type here and click edit, this should change. So how do we do that? Well, to do that, I'm going to create again a function for the updating. I'm going to call this the update task, and we want to access the ID as well, because we want to know which item or which column or which row we want to update from the table. So we do have to get the ID to actually do that, but we also want to have access to the new description that we want to update to. So what I want to do is I want to actually create a new state here, and this state will be called new description. It'll just be for holding the value of the text area while we are typing. So I'm just going to say new description, and it will be a string. Then when there's a change on this description, we will just replace this with the event, and we're going to say set new description equal to the event dot target dot value. And then this means that when we call the edit, what did we call it? We called it update task. Yeah. And we pass the ID. So we need to do the same thing we did with the delete. We need to pass the task.id. This means that now we have access to the new description through the state. So in the update task, we want to change this operation from delete to update. Now the update operation is pretty interesting because with it, you just have to pass an object containing what columns in this table you want to update. For example, I just want to update the description. So I can just write description here and pass the new description. And what it will do is it will just update this specific column with this value when the row has an ID equal to this ID. Now, again, if there's any issues, it will let us know, and we'll change this to updating. And you'll see that now, if I go back here and I write a new description, we can call it new description or whatever, and I click edit. When we refresh this, this will be the new description. So this is how you can connect your React app with Supabase and execute some CRUD operations on your table. Now, this is the very basics of Supabase. So from now on, we're going to start getting into some more advanced stuff. So in order to work with authentication, I have here some changes on our project. I basically just separated the task management stuff that we just worked on into its separate component. And I also made a separate component called the auth component. This is a component that is going to allow you to sign in or sign up for an account using Supabase as the authentication provider. And this is how it should look like. You see here we have a sign in or a sign up. Later on, we will actually only display the sign in and sign up if the user is not signed in. And we won't display this until the user signed in, but we can't do that now because we haven't started the authentication stuff. But our point is we want to be able to first sign in and sign up for an account, and only then we should be able to see the task manager and also only be able to execute any of the operations we've done so far, like inserting, deleting, and editing, if the user is signed in. Now, automatically, authentication is already set up on your Supabase project. You don't have to do anything differently, so it should be good to go. Now, what you might want to do is, you see, this is what I set up. We have here a sign up and sign in. If I click on this button, you switch between sign in and sign up. So the component is pretty simple. Again, if you want to start from this point on, there's going to be a link for that as in the description as well. But the point is, we have here this handle submit function that will be called whenever you click on this button for sign in or for sign up. We have to handle in both cases, and it will basically just get the combination between email and password that you put, and it should log in or sign in for a user with that combination. So how do we do that using Supabase? Well, the first thing we need to do is we need to check if we're trying to sign up or if we're trying to sign in, right? Because that's important for us. So the easy way is we're going to just say if is sign up is true, then we'll execute some functionality. If it's not, then it's signing in, and then we'll execute other functionality. Again, I've already set up the switching functionality. It's all held up by this state. And I've also set up the functionality to populate these two fields based on the on-change of the input. So if you want to sign up a user using Supabase, how do you do that? Well, to do that, you want to call an await of the Supabase client. Now, instead of saying from, we actually now want to access the auth capabilities of Supabase. And I'm going to click auth.sign up. Now, the sign up is a specific function for signing up a user, and it is important because when you sign up for the first time, you will need to confirm your email. So it's like there's this whole process that websites have that when you put your email over here and you sign up with that email, it will actually Supabase will send an email to your own email, and you'll need to confirm in order to sign up, making your project way more secure. Now, when you call the sign up function, you will want to pass information about the user. But the only two things that you do need to pass is the email and the password combination. So I'm going to put here the email and the password that we got from the inputs. Now, when this is done, we will get back any errors that might have occurred. So I'll come here and say, if error happened, then I want to console.error error signing up. And then I'll just display the error. And I'll also return so that there's no issues. Now, on the else case scenario over here, we kind of want to do a similar thing, but we use a different function. We use the sign in with email and password, or with just password. But the thing is, you've noticed that there's different types of signing in that you can do, right? There's multiple different functions and ways you can authenticate a user using Supabase. In this video, we're specifically talking about the sign in with email and password. But you can do that with other options as well if you're interested in doing that for your project. Now, it is pretty much the same. You just pass the email and the password and it should be good to go. I just realized that since we're doing this inside of the same function, we have both errors with the same name. So what we might want to do is call this one sign up error and then use that instead, and call this one sign in error and use this, so we can have a distinguishing, like something that will distinguish both of them. Oh, I need to put a comma here as well. Perfect. Now we're able to sign in and sign up to our accounts. It is as simple as this. Now, obviously, checking to see if a user is authenticated or not is something we're going to do later on. But for now, let's check to see if we're able to sign in. So I have here like a fake email that I used once for a video where I reviewed resumes, and I'm going to be using it for this video. So I'm going to copy this email over here. Let's use it to sign in. I'm going to put the email over here, and then we'll put a password. I'm just going to type password just to keep it simple. Actually, let me type it twice to make sure that I put the right one. And then I'm going to click on sign up. Now, if everything is correct, I will receive an email over here with the to confirm our sign up. Now, obviously, we didn't set up any visual confirmation. Probably you would want to show up a toaster or something saying to check your email. But in our case, we didn't. But we know that it worked because it said here for us to confirm our email. I'm going to click on this. And now, all of a sudden, I am signed in. You don't even know this because we didn't do anything to show if we signed in or not. But I'm actually signed in. Now, how do we detect if a user is logged in or not? Well, the way we can do this is we're going to come here to our app.tsx, and inside of here, we're going to write some code that is going to keep track of the session of the user who's currently logged in. So to do that, we're actually going to create a state called session, and we're going to call it set session. Now, I'm just going to start it as null, but then we can add the session later. Now, what we want to do is when the user enters the website, we want to check to see if there's a session available or not. And whenever there's a change to the session, we want to reflect that on the website. So I'm going to run a use effect to get this functionality. And inside of this use effect, I'm going to have a listener that is going to be listening to any state changes to the user's authentication status. So the first thing we would want to do is just get the current session. If there is a session available, we'll get it. So to do that, I'm just going to create a variable called current session, and I'm going to set it equal to the supabase.auth.get session. And this should return us back when we await. We should get back the current session. Since this is inside of a use effect, I actually need to create a function here. Let's call it fetch session. And let's put this inside of here instead of here. And we'll make this async. And then I'm just going to call the fetch session over here. Then when we get the session, I just want to set the session state to be equal to this current session. Now, I'll specifically say .data so we can get it. Also, I don't really care about type definitions again here. So I'm just going to make this be any, just so it stops giving us errors. But basically, this is how we set the session. That's in the case that we are already logged in. Also, I will console log it. We are already logged in, so I want to show you guys how this session data that we get back from Supabase looks like. And since we are logged in over here, we should see, it's running infinitely. That's not good. Let me put empty array here so we stop bombarding our Supabase with calls. But let's go to console over here, and we should see that this is what our current session looks like. There's no error in the object, and there's a data. This data includes a session object inside of it, which includes an access token, an expires at, an expires in, a refresh token, and a bunch of stuff related to the actual session, but also some information about the user who's logged in, like their metadata, like how they signed in, what is their email, it doesn't say their password, but you know what I mean. If you had more information about the user, it would be included here as well. So you see here, the role of the user is authenticated. And this is important because when we write our role level security policies, it will use that role to allow the user or not allow the user to execute the different operations. Now, with this information in mind, what we want to do is if a user is signed in, then we want to display the task manager. But if it is not, then we want to display the auth. So to do that, I'm just going to come over here and I'm just going to say if session is not null, then we want to display the task manager. If not, then we want to display the auth. And you'll see that now when I come back here and I refresh this, it only shows the task manager because we are logged in. But if I wanted to see the auth back, I would need to sign out. Now, how do I sign out? Well, it's actually pretty simple. I'm going to add here a fragment so that we can just add one more port to this task manager component. I'm just going to add really simply here a button to log out. And let's call a logout function when we click that button. We haven't created that function, but we'll do it right now. And the logout function is really simple, as it is with many of the other Supabase operations. All we want to do here is literally just await supabase.auth.signout. That's it. You see that when I click on this button, now it signs out. But it didn't immediately show us the authentication page because, again, we're not switching our session whenever there's an actual switch in our auth state. We will do that in a second. Right now, it did log us out, but we don't know yet, so we didn't update the session state, meaning that we have to refresh this and Oh, it's still showing. Let me inspect element. But it is logged out because there's nothing here. Oh, yeah. We actually, so over here, when we set our session, we actually need to set the dot session, not just data, right? To actually get the session. And now you see here, we see the sign-in page. If I were to, again, log in with PedroTech resumes at gmail.com and put my password, if it's the correct one, and I refresh this, now we are logged in. If I log out and I refresh this, now we're logged out. Perfect. Now, how do we make this be very fluid, right? Make it automatically, switch the state and switch the session automatically. Well, to do that, we need to use a listener in our use effect. So a listener will basically allow us to subscribe to an event that is happening, and it will listen to any triggers of that event. The event we want to listen to is the Supabase.auth.onAuth state change event. And in here, we'll grab the event and the session directly, and it will be able to run a function whenever this event is triggered. Now, what function? What do we want to run inside of this function? Well, whenever there's a change in the state of the authenticator, then this session value will be different from the current session. So I will set the session to be equal to whatever this new value is. Now, what does this return? Well, all that this returns is the listener, but it comes in a format of data. I like to change it to auth listener. And the reason why it's important for you to use the listener is because when you subscribe to any event in React or in any other, like in any way, like if you do this in mobile as well, you should probably clean it up. You want to clean up, right? Because you don't want there to be any memory leaks. And the way you clean up from subscriptions in React, especially inside of a use effect, is you return a function that will unsubscribe to that listener. So I will say auth listener.subscription.unsubscribe to prevent any memory leaks. Now you see that when we sign in, again, I'll put PedroTech resumes at Gmail and I put the password. We should see it actually updating the session state and showing the task manager automatically. And that's what happens. Perfect. You see that should happen as well when I log out. Perfect. So it is updating as the state actually changes. Now let's go back to the table that we created and let's add some row level security policies to the tasks table. Now to do that, we'll come here to policies and we want to enable row level security for our tasks table. Now immediately what that is going to do is we're basically not going to be able to do anything to this task manager. You see, we weren't even able to display the tasks on the table anymore. The reason for that is because when you enable RLS and you have no policies created, it automatically defaults to not letting anyone do anything with the table. So let's start with the easiest one, which is what we've done before, which is basically allowing everyone, no matter what, to be able to read the table. It is the first policy up here on the top. This makes sense in this case. We want to allow everyone to be able to read the tasks, right? Even if you're not authenticated, it makes sense. In a website like Facebook or Instagram, this is probably the case as well. You're able to see the posts from other people, even if you're not authenticated. Maybe there's a check there if you're not a public account, you're a private one, but that's regardless. So now we want to be able to insert items again, because if I were to write something over here and click add task, it wouldn't insert it, right? I'm refreshing this, that thing didn't get inserted. So what I want to do is I want to only enable people to insert if they're authenticated. And again, the policy template here is perfect for it. I'm going to click on that and I'm going to click save policy. And you see that now, because I'm authenticated, I'm now able to do that. I can add here an item and it will actually add that item. Now for update, I'm going to click here on create policy and we should look at the update policies that they have here on the template. So the first one says enable update for users based on email. It says that this policy assumes that your table has a column email, which isn't really true because our table for tasks doesn't have a column called email. So that doesn't apply to us. This one says policy with table joins. It doesn't really apply to us. So what I'm actually going to do is I'm not going to choose any of them. Let's make it on our own. So I'm going to call this update for users with their own tasks. So I'm just going to allow users to update stuff if it is related to their own tasks. Now let's click on create a policy and let's add one for update. So let's look at the template for the update ones. The first one says enable update for users based on email. Let's see if this one applies. It says this policy assumes that your table has a column email and it allows users to update rows which the email column matches their email. So our tasks table doesn't have a column called email. It just has information about tasks. But what that policy said makes sense. We only want to allow a user to update a task if they were the one who added it, right? So maybe we should relook at our table for tasks, and maybe we should now, since we have the that we're keeping track of the user and the user's auth value, we might want to keep track of the user's email or the user ID inside of each task to know who created it. So to do that, I'm actually going to delete all of the tasks we currently have, and I'm going to add over here a new column. It's going to be called email, or let's just call it email just to keep it simple. Then this is going to be a text, and it again won't be nullable and it will be unique. Now I'm going to click on save, and what this will do is, again, it will, when we come here to the policy part in authentication and for policies and then for the tasks, when I create this policy over here, it will now check to see if the email of what you're trying to update matches the email that is currently authenticated. Now, we do need to make a change though, because now when we refresh this, you'll see nothing will appear. Obviously, we don't have any tasks yet. But now when we create a task, we actually need to make some changes to our code to add the user email, or else we won't actually add it. So what we want to do is I want to come over here, and when we go to our task manager, I want to send the user email when they add a new task or add a new task. So here, when we click insert a new task, we also want to add the email field over here. I'll have to destructure this, but we want to add the new email field directly. Now, how do we get that email? Well, we need to have access to the session of the user currently signed in. I'm going to pass the session. Oh, I just realized I need to change this to task manager. I can't call it app, but yeah, I'm actually going to pass this through the props. Let's call it session, and it would just be object called session, and it will have a type of session. And Supabase actually provides the session type directly, so that's pretty easy for us. Now, what we want to do here is we'll have access to the user's email by saying session dot user dot email, and we can insert that directly. Now, what we have to do is we have to pass, and also let me just fix that component name that I had before. But now let's just pass the session directly as a state here. So I'll pass the session. Perfect. Now, what should happen is when I add a new task over here and I click add task and I refresh this, we should see the item. And when I go to the table, we should see that it actually kept track of the correct email for the user who's authenticated. Great. Now, when we edit this field, we actually should be able, actually I'll put something that makes sense. Let's say random words I am writing. I don't know. And I click edit, we now should see that it allowed you to update, because the tasks table now has an email and the user has an email, and internally when you try to update on this table, it will check to see if both are the same. Now let's do the same thing. Let's finally add one for the delete, right? And the delete will be pretty much the same thing. We're going to click on create policy and we're going to check for the delete ones. Now you see that the delete one is actually based on user ID. I don't know why it's different from email. They should have just kept it the same. In our case, we actually want to change this because remember, we don't have a user ID field on the task right now. We do have an email we just added. So we want to copy this thing over here. And we'll click on the delete template and we'll just replace it with this. This check is important. We're basically just saying that we want to allow delete if the email is equal to this. We're going to click on save policy. And now let's check to see if this works. If I click delete, it should have deleted the item. Perfect. Now we have successfully set up authentication, a simple CRUD inside of our app with row level security for all 4 types of operators in our database table. Now let's learn about making this project work in real time, meaning that we want to enable subscriptions on our tables such that if there are multiple people logged in to their own account and multiple tasks are being added at the same time, people on different browsers and different computers will see the tasks appearing on their screen that other people created as they are being created. To do that, we want to make some changes to our table. We'll come over here to the tasks table and we want to edit the table. Now, the one thing we want to do is we want to click on this button to enable real-time. This basically will start broadcasting an event that you can subscribe to that will emit whenever there are changes on this table to authorized subscribers. So I'm going to click save over here and it is going to basically save the changes. Now that it's saved, let's go back to our code over here. And in the task manager, I want to add a use effect to it. Now this use effect, which by the way, we already have over here, it is going to be independent. This one, what it's going to do is it's just going to fetch the tasks at the initial page load. But this one, it is going to subscribe like we did with the auth states change. It's going to subscribe, but this time to a table. So how do we do that? We say supabase.from and we specify which table we want to subscribe to, which is the tasks table. But to say that we want to subscribe to it, we have to use the on function. And what we want to do on this use effect is we want to first create a channel. And what this channel is going to be is the place in which we're broadcasting our messages to. So where we're broadcasting the new tasks when they are inserted, we want to create a specific channel with a channel name that we're going to be sending those to, because you can have multiple different places and real-time subscriptions, so you need to give a name to it. Now the name we're going to give is, we're going to say .channel. We're going to call it the tasks channel. Now to subscribe to it, we're going to say channel.on, and then in here we're going to say we want to subscribe to Postgres changes. Now, the event we want to subscribe to is going to be an insert event. So whenever there's a new task being added, we want to listen to that. The schema is going to be public, and the table is going to be, and then you put the name of the table you want to listen to, which is going to be the tasks table. Now, after this, we will get back a callback function that we can run whenever there is a change that was listened to. We can get the information of the change through the payload. Now, what is this payload going to be like? And if I want to have access to this new item that was just inserted, because we know this is an event of insertion, we can do that by saying new task is equal to payload.new. And then this new over here will represent that new task. I can even cast the type to task because we know that that's the type of that item. Now, what we want to do now is actually automatically, I want to add this new task to our list of tasks. So I'm going to set the tasks array to be equal to its current value, but I'm going to add the new task to the end of it. So there's only one way for us to test this. Now, we can actually check to see if the subscription is active by actually coming here and saying .subscribe and then grabbing the status of the subscription and running a console log that will say the actual subscription, and then I'll put the status right next to it. Let's check to see if this is working. So Initially, right off the bat, if I come to our project and I inspect element with a console, we should see that the subscription says subscribed. Perfect. Let me refresh this again. You see it says subscribed, even though in the beginning it was closed. Now, what I want to do is I want to actually open up two windows. Now, what's going to happen is if I actually remove this code, and I come back here, and on these two windows, I come on this one and I add a new task, and I add this task, you can see that nothing happened over here, right? You can also see that nothing happened over here, but that's because we're not automatically replacing it. But you can see that when I refresh this, it will appear, and when I refresh this, it will appear. Now, if I came over here to the insertion thing, right, the handle submit, and after we successfully submitted the task, we just set the tasks array to be equal to, similar to what we did over here, right? We just add the new task to the end of it. Now, what is going to happen is why is it giving us an error? Oh, we don't want to just add the new task because it's just a title and description. We actually want to get back the task that was added. To do that, we need to add a select statement right after the insertion. So it will return back the data of the task that was just added, and we put a single in the end so it doesn't return as an array, it returns as a single item. Then we can get the task that was just added through the data, and we can use that instead. Now, if we go over here and I add a new task added, whatever, and I put this as the description, you see it will automatically appear over here, but it won't automatically appear over here. If I refresh this, now it will be over here. But if I were to come over here and I were to uncomment this, what we should see is that now, let me just delete this and this. Oh, I deleted it twice, but yeah, I deleted that. Let's just add that item again. We should see it appearing automatically here, but also because it emitted a broadcast, it should appear here as well. And that's exactly what happens. Now, the problem that I wanted to exemplify is because we are actually adding the item to the end of the list directly, and we're also adding it optimistically when we insert the data, on this side, it might get a bit screwed up. So there's actually no need to do this that we just did over here on the insertion. I just did that so that you guys can have an idea of what we wanted to do. But basically, now both sides will listen to the broadcast changes and it will add to them automatically. If I were to here add a new task like clean room, description, whatever, and I click add task, you see it in real time, it appears on both users' screen. So this is how you deal with subscriptions and emitting and broadcasting info. If you want a more in-depth tutorial on this, I'm bringing a video where I show how to build like a full like chat app, Tinder-like app where you can talk to people and emit messages in real time. So stay tuned for that. Now let's address another topic which is really important with Supabase, which is how do you store images and files in the storage product that exists. Well, to do that, we actually will do something cool with the example we already have. So imagine in this scenario, you want to allow a user to add an image that is associated to a task. Like, I know the tasks, I'm not really writing like titles and descriptions that make sense, but imagine with the clean room one, you want to put an image to represent your room. No, I don't know, just an example, right? Well, how would you do that? Well, to do that, I'm going to come over here and I'm going to add a column to our task table. And this column will be called image URL. So what we're going to do is we're going to upload an image to the Supabase storage, and that storage system will generate image URLs for where that image will be located in Supabase, and then we're going to store them to the associated task. So when you upload a file to Supabase, you can access that file through that URL, and what we're doing here is we're just storing the URL for the image as a column in our task table. Now, what I want to do is I want to make this be a text, and I do want to actually let's just make everything be it won't allow anything to be nullable, and I'll just click save. Perfect. Oh yeah, in that case, we do have to delete everything first. So let me delete everything, and let's redo this. Let's just do image URL, choose text, and then I'm going to choose this, then save. Now, what we want to do is we want to come to the storage part of the project, and inside of here, we can create a bucket. So this bucket is just a place in which you're going to store and manage different files. So you can have a bucket for your images, you can have a bucket for a specific group of images, for a specific group of files. It's just a way for you to organize. And you can make it a public bucket or add some sort of configuration and policy to it. Since I've already went over row level security and stuff like that, I'm just gonna make it public for ease of the video. But you can apply all the same policies we applied to the table to this bucket as well. Now for this, we're gonna call it tasks images, and we're going to click save. Now we have this bucket that we can output images inside of here. Now to do this, we'll go back here to our code, and we want to add a new input on our form that will allow users to select an image or a file from their computer. So we're going to put that actually right above the add button. And over here, what we want to add is an input of type file. Not file, is just file. We're going to say that it accepts, and we can specify obviously that it only accepts images, but it can be images of any type. Then we're going to close this input, and we're going to add an onChange to it. Now this onChange, we're going to create a function called handle file change. Now in this function, which will create probably, I don't know, let's just do it over here. It doesn't really matter. In this function, what we want is when we call this function, we just want to store the file into a state. So we want to create a state that we can use to represent that file. We're gonna create one here. We're gonna call it task image and set task image. Now what this state is gonna represent is it's going to be null initially, but the type of it is gonna be a file or null. So those are the two options. Now in the handle file change, all we want to do is we're going to grab the event from here, and I'll give the type just for you guys to know. If you're using TypeScript, the type will be of change event HTML input element. And inside of here, I want to ask, okay, if there is a file, right, or multiple files, and the length of the files list is greater than 0, then I want to store the first file that was selected. Obviously, because it can select multiple files, there's no way to know. Files is a list anyways, so we know that no matter what, the image we want is the first one. So we'll just say e.target.files, and we'll grab the first item. Perfect. Now this means that in our add, where is it? Where is it? No, it's the handle submit, right? This is where we add a new task. In here, before we add the new task to the database, we have to perform the uploading of the image to the Supabase storage. So what I want to do is I want to create a variable called image URL. It will be a string, but it can also be null, and I'll initially set it to null. And first, I want to check to see if the task image was set, because if you didn't select it, then this won't work. So if image URL was selected, then we're going to await, and we're going to call a function called upload image, which we're going to create, and we'll pass this task image as an argument to that function. What we want in this function is for it to call Supabase to send it to the storage and then return back the URL of the image, so that then we can pass it directly here together with the email. We'll pass it as a field in the object that we are inserting. Perfect. Now let's create the upload image function. To do it, we'll do it right over here. Upload image, is async. And we know that we need to call Supabase on it. Now, one thing though, remember this returns the image URL, and it also takes in the task image. So inside of here, we want to say that the argument of it will be a file, and it will be of type file. And the return of it is going to be a promise that is going to be a string or null, right? And then right now it's given an error because we're not returning anything. We'll just return nothing for now, just for that error to go away. But the process of uploading an image to Supabase is very simple. We have to first define a unique file path that we want for the image we're going to store in the public task images bucket, right? So the reason why we want to define a unique image name is because people might be uploading multiple images at the same time. So you want to make sure that they are all unique. Now, an easy way for you to make the file path will be to actually make the name of the image be a combination of the original name of the image or the file that the user uploaded, plus the current date of when they uploaded this. So it's very rare that two people upload the same file with the same name. No, they can be different files, but with the same name at the exact same timestamp, right? So this will make sure that all of the titles are unique. So to do this, I'm gonna make it into a combination of, like I said, the name of the file, and I do that by saying file.name, and I'll put a dash in between it because then I'll insert the current date, which will get it by saying date.now. This is just to make the name of the file. But to upload it, all we have to do is we'll just say const is equal to await supabase.storage, and we specify the name of the bucket that we want to upload to, which is going to be the tasks image, or is it task images? No, yeah, tasks images. Yeah, we'll put an S in the end, and then we want to say dot upload. Now this upload will require two things. It will require both a file path, which we just created, and the actual file, which we have from the argument of the function. Now we can get to see if there's any errors here. If there was any errors, then we want to actually console.error, and we're going to make it be error uploading image. And we'll just show the error message. And we'll also return, so we skip the rest of the function. We have to return null in this case. But if there's no errors uploading, it means that the image was successfully uploaded. So all we want now is to get the URL that is public for that image. And to do that, we're going to set this equal to await Supabase dot storage, and we can access the URL by specifying a bucket similar to what we just did over here. So I'll specify the task images bucket, and I can call this function called get public URL. And what we need to pass to this get public URL is just the path or the name of the file. And we have that because we have the file path over here. We pass this here, and now this will return some data. This data is going to be the public URL. So we access the actual string of the URL by saying data, not file path, data dot public URL. And now this will return the correct public URL that we will set it over here, and that we will later insert it to the table. So let's check to see if all of this is working. Let's come over here. Let's add a new task. I'm going to say again, I don't know, let me see, clean kitchen. Then the description is clean the fridge and the sink. Now I'm going to choose a file. I'm just going to choose a random image, a couple of the images I was generating for the thumbnail of this video. Then I'm going to click on add task, and hopefully it will have added the task. Let's check, see if there's any images now in our bucket. It doesn't seem like there is. So let's see if there was any console errors. Oh, could not find image URL in the column of tasks. Oh, it seems like when we sent the image URL, we actually called it image URL like this. And then we'll just pass the image URL here. So Let's try this again. There might be an error as well with the uploading of the image, but let's see. I'm gonna just type this again, and then let's type this again, and I'm gonna click on add task, and let's see if there was another error. Yeah, it seems like there is an error with the uploading of the image. So I figured out what the error is. So we need to add a new policy here, which I didn't before. I like adding the policy to one of these two over here. I'm gonna add the policy to the storage.objects, and I'm gonna click on get started quickly, and I'll enable insert access for authenticated users only. That's the policy I wanna add. And I'll click review, and I'll click save. And what this will do is, now if I come over here and I click on add task, it should add the task with the image. Now the image, obviously we're not seeing it now. I'll show you how to display them. The image should now exist in the tasks image. As you can see over here, the image is here. And on the table, we should see the URL to that image being displayed on the image URL field here as well. Perfect. Now, how do we display this image whenever we display the items? Well, it is as simple as when you display the UI over here on the list, we now can add, below the description, we can add an image tag, right? And just put the source of it to be the task.image URL. Now, that wasn't a type on the object we created over here, so we'll add it. It will be a string, and we'll also set some sort of styling to it. I'll put a style. The max height will be, actually I'll just set all of the heights to be like 70 pixels, just so that it's not huge, but you can see the image is now being displayed over here. If I were to come here and add something else, I'll just put whatever, and I'll choose another image. It should work the same, hopefully. Yes, perfect. So this is how you deal with storage and images in Supabase.